and being recorded and will be uploaded for public access via the council YouTube site. We are therefore reminded not to make specific references to individuals and only disclose information which is in the public domain. I also remind members that the chat function is to be used only for placing motions and amendments. Members participating remotely should activate the hand function when wishing to speak. This function will be monitored. Members in the chamber, you can raise your hand when you want to normally speak at the appropriate time. Okay, members, do we have any apologies for absence?
Morning, Chair. I've no apologies, but Councillor Niven is running late. She has an appointment. She'll be here soon. And I'll just do a quick roll call. Councillor Baird.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Gale, Chair, you're here. Councillor Hutchison.
Present, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McGilvery.
Here, online.
Thank you. And Councillor Morrison.
Councillor Morrison is actually travelling, so he may be in and out.
I let him in a short while ago, but he seems to have dropped off again, so hopefully he'll join us in due course. Thank you.
Do you have any questions of interest? Transparency statements?
Yes, Chair. Item 10, application by Dornoch District Community Association for funding from the Common Good for the new community centre. I stood down as a director of DADCA at the AGM a month or so ago, but I have an 8-year connection with them, and I've been one of the team driving this project forward, and I'm quite comfortable that the Common Good can comfortably sustain the ask, but I will take no part in the discussion or decision and stand outside the meeting at that point.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any other declarations, Fiona?
Chair, I don't have any others, no.
Okay, members, we're going on to item 3 of the agenda, and we have Jamie Thorne here from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Jamie, over to you.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, right.
Everyone, yes, thank you, Chair. And as the Chair says, my name's Jamie Thrower. I'm a Group Commander with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and I cover quite a large area north of Inverness, but I'm here at this meeting today. I know you're used to seeing Station Commander David Bell, but he's unavailable today, so I've stepped into his place just to deliver the scrutiny report for fire. So I'm sure all members have read the report and seen it, so I'm not going to go through the report verbatim by anything, just to highlight a few points, if that's okay, and then keen to take questions towards the end. So provided the report that you'll be in receipt of, just to highlight, this is obviously for it's reporting over the 6-month period, Q1 and Q2, so that's basically all our activity up until the end of September this year. So just moving through the report, just want to highlight a couple of things. Looking on ultimately page 3 of the report is the summary of our activity, and just to draw our attention to I suppose the middle line of that infographic. So over the reporting period, we had 3 people rescued by firefighters, no people needing any treatment or being injured from fire, no fire casualties, and we had 2 people requiring treatment from non-fire related incidents, and unfortunately we did have 1 non-fire fatality that was an interagency incident. Moving down the bottom of that page, just we're seeing in the committee area that the most common incident types are fire outdoor, it's listed as, and it was just really just to point out that the fire outdoor, that will include but not limited to wildfires. It's a whole range of fires that basically not involving property in the outside environment. So it does include wildfires, but it's not limited to. Moving over in the report to pages 4 and 5, just we've got a couple of trend lines there, and as we often say in these meetings, thankfully we're dealing with quite small numbers, so it's always difficult to identify trends, because even a variation of 1 or 2 can have a massive effect on the graph. So the only ones I was wanting to try and give a bit of rationale behind is down towards the bottom of page 4 is the one on unwanted fire alarm signals. And I think we've mentioned this in previous meetings, whereby we had a significant change to our policy and procedures on unwanted fire alarm signals a few years ago. So there was a time when we were up in the 30s for the area. We're down below half of that, and that's more to do with this change that we only go to sleeping risks for fire alarms now. If a fire alarm's in a normally occupied building, it's not got a sleeping risk, that's left with the duty holder. So that's where we've seen that's the main reason behind that decline. But we still always go, any fire alarms where there's a sleeping risk or vulnerable people, at any time of the day, we still go out to that, and that's what the numbers are still accounting for. And then just moving over the page, the home fire safety visits, the line there kind of may think that we're seeing a decline in the number of home fire safety visits that we're doing. That is accurate in terms of the volume that we're doing is less, but what we're doing now is we're concentrating our efforts on high risk people in the community. So what happens now is people will fill in an online forum, or we can do it on their behalf. So this online forum will generate a risk rating. And where the risk is high, that's where we're concentrating our efforts and getting out to these properties and meeting people in their home. If the survey comes back and they're not at risk, it's just basically leaflet online advice that's given. And we think that's a much more appropriate use of our time and effort is concentrating on those high risk people that come out from the back of the questionnaire. Just moving on further on the report, as I say, I'm not looking to go through every single page. But pleasing to see low numbers of accidental dwelling fires over the reporting period, and certainly no injuries to people arising from them. We are still seeing road traffic collisions in the area as well, and that's where the two injuries and hospital attendees came from road traffic collisions. Section 6 talks about deliberate fires, and that's certainly an area that we're certainly keeping an eye on. That's something I'm working with my team on. We've not got concerning numbers, but it's just the fact that what we list as a deliberate fire is anything where there's an intent, where the fire has been set with an intent. So probably one worthwhile mentioning here is what a deliberate fire is not. If there was land management burning going on, or if somebody they were meaning to set the fire on, and for example, if they were burning rubbish legally, if they were legally allowed to be burning rubbish, or have a muir burn, and then that fire goes out of control, that is not classed as a deliberate fire in our terms. That's an accidental fire because it accidentally went out of control. They didn't intend to cause the damage that they did. So this small number here of 9 deliberate fires, where there has been an intent, and there's a list there of how that's broken down as well, in terms of there being 1 deliberate dwelling fire as well. So certainly an area we're concentrating our resources on to reduce, and just in terms of educating people and working with Police Scotland on that specific topic. Just further on in the report, moving just unwanted fire alarm signals in section 8, I've already mentioned. We can see the decline in unwanted fire alarm signals more in that graph than we've seen in the previous graph, but I've given the rationale for that previously. Talked previously about road traffic collisions and home fire safety visits. So I was just looking, I'm sorry the pages are no numbered, and I'm conscious I'm going to try and raise that internally, but the sections are numbered. So I just want to bring members to the attention of section 12, which talks about station availability and establishment. One thing I'm always keen to highlight here is the availability numbers for our appliances. They don't include our joint mobilising option, and that's where, so we always need to mobilise with 4 qualified personnel, at the minimum of 4 qualified personnel on a fire engine for it to go and respond to an incident. So the numbers there don't reflect the times when we're able to essentially joint mobilise and enabling stations to make a composite crew of 4. The other part I've got on that, and I could go, probably if there's any specific questions towards the end, I've probably got a bit more detail that I can give, but I'm just going to count up basically more than half the stations. So I'm conscious that this reporting period ended on September. I've got positive news that the majority of these stations we've managed to recruit people into stations, so these numbers are expected to go up. Certainly, and will probably not be realised until Q4 of this year, and certainly 1st of April 26 onwards, because as we know, it takes a wee while to train people. But there's a number of people going on training courses in January, and some have already been achieved since the report's been published. There's people achieved their training and are now breathing apparatus trained, as we call it. And it's promising that the numbers will increase by the recruitment activity that's going on. And in the last section in the report, a couple of photos in there, folks, of activities have been going on. A lot of stuff goes on in our stations in the committee area that's not just responding to incidents. And the main one that some of you may have been along to attend their passing out parade, but what we call the fire skills course, and that's where there's high school kids, it's S3 to S5, managed to get 12 along to a course that was run in Dornoch fire station, a weeks-long course, and there's some photos of that in the report, and I really pleasing to see that activity going on in the area, certainly from my point of view, and it was well received by the pupils and by the school, and their families were there at the passing out parade. So that was just a quick synopsis of the report. Just welcome any comments or questions, please.
Jamie, thank you very much for that. That was really interesting. It's good to see the numbers are very low for fires in this part of the world, which is great. And please pass on our thanks to your staff for the work that they do. It's great. Very grateful for it. I've got a couple of questions. I'll open up. First of all, you mentioned something about an online forum for home safety visits. I'm wondering if we're working on an online forum basis, what about the people who don't have access to being online? How do you actually identify the need with that demographic? And also, with regard to recruitment, can you? You said you managed to recruit in some of the places that are low here. Can you just give us some more detail on that? For example, Scourie at the moment on this chart has nobody. So if we get some information on that, that would be really useful. So yes, that's my two questions. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Yep, I'm happy to answer that. Yes, probably I dwell too much on the online forum. So similar to the unwanted fire alarm signals, we've had a change in the systems that operate for our home fire safety visits. But you're entirely right. We're acutely aware of not just offering that online option. So we had in Highland some really good referral pathways for other agencies referring members of the community into our organisation. Great working partnerships with NHS, police, with Highland Council, and third sector as well. Because we've changed the computer systems, we're having to re-establish all them. Basically, we need to sign new memorandum of understandings with our referral partners. So that's underway, and that will get back to the stage whereby we're ultimately under the same arrangement as we are before, once we've got these memorandums of understanding signed. So yeah, there's still the referring pathway in for members of the community that are known to other agencies. We've still got the telephone number, and we're still out there engaging in the community. So basically everything that we were doing before, we're still doing. That online form is always there. It's us that fill in that if needs be. So we can still engage with people face to face, but we'll put their details through on the home safety site that we have, and then that'll give us that risk rating. And that's when, if they're coming out in a higher risk, we'll go at the property and visit them. Whereas if it's a lower risk because there's, for example, there's no smokers or there's no vulnerable people, we'll just give leaflets out with fire safety advice. Having smoke detection is the biggest thing. And again, if they're answering that question to say they've got working smoke detection, then that gives us we're content with that part of thing. Is that okay with that, Chair? Any further questions on that part?
That's fine, thank you for that. I also asked about recruitment.
Yep.
Give us some more information about the
Scourie,
for example, which is nobody.
No, exactly. And what I'll do is I'll answer Scourie first, just to so Scourie's not going to be solved overnight, but that is one of the ones that I've got annotated on my sheet that is a positive story. So despite that saying 0, we have got one person back. So there was one person at Scourie that was on a career break. So they're now back. So as much as they're on their own there, we've got a person on station. There's still a fire appliance there. So that fire appliance is still being maintained. All the equipment's been tested, and it's ready to respond as part of the joint mobilising, whereas before it wasn't even being able to be utilised as joint mobilising because there was nobody there. But for Scourie, we've got 2 new applicants for Scourie, and it's early in the process for them, but 2 new applicants. There's one going for a fitness test in January, and one new applicant that's just came onto the line since applied through our online forum, that came on since the report was published. So we'll really be keen to try and get them. We'll do our best to get them progressing through the system in tandem. All going well, that only takes us to 3, but we're just actively recruiting in the area where the banners up on the roads. You've probably seen the big banners that we get permission to put up for a short period of time just on the entrances into the areas. Probably just on a similar note, Lochinver as well. I'm just trying to pick out the ones that are considerably low that we've got positive stories on. So Lochinver there, shown as 3 of a crew. There is one person going on their what we'll call it basic training. So they're on their basic training course in January 2026. So all going well with that. They attend and pass that course. We will then see Lochinver available as a standalone pump, and then that 0% for the reporting period from, as I say, there'll probably be a slight increase in Q4, but certainly a more defined increase in the first quarter of 26, April onwards. We've got nothing for tongue for recruitment. I'm just going to be going through the 0% ones that we've got now. Nobody applying for tongue at all. However, we do have applicants for Betty Hill, and that was the very first pilot that we done for joint mobilising. So there is 2 people at tongue. There's an appliance there. It gets maintained. They are getting mobilised as part of the joint mobilising, primarily with Betty Hill, and occasionally with Dornoch. Again, the other ones that have got a lot of people, it tends to be the bigger towns. So we've got 3 new people at Dornoch. So where that says 11, 2, we've somebody retired and resigned from there, but we're going from 11 to 13 at Dornoch. But I'm conscious that that's the towns the towns more on the east coast is where you can see by the numbers we don't historically have challenges recruiting there. It's more on the smaller villages on the west coast. Is there any other specific questions on stations? Because I'm happy to go through this.
I'll have the floor, Jimmy. Councillor Beard.
Yeah, thank you. Could I come on your station availability in Dornoch Bridge and note that there was just 21.58% availability. I understood that there was a female that was in the team at one time. Is that obviously not recorded now? There's just 5 males in Dornoch Bridge.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. Yes, we've had a couple of resignations and retirals over the course of the reporting period from all different stations. But yeah, at the time of reporting, we had 5 personnel at Dornoch Bridge, all male colleagues, and that percentage of just over 21% availability for the reporting period. But again, that doesn't capture the joint mobilising that we can do between, it's either Lairg and Bonner or Dornoch and Bonner or any other station, but it would tend to be the closer ones. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the geography. But in terms of Bonner, they've got, since the report's been published, we've got 1 individual that's been given a conditional offer of employment. So it's basically a conditional offer subject to medical outcomes. And we've got 2 new applicants. So they're just very early on in their application, but it's pleasing that they've applied. And again, we'll take them through the process that starts off in January. They go to Invergordon, they go to Invergordon in January to do a fitness and a practical selection test, just and that puts them through their paces for all the practical elements of being a firefighter, and that's the first route on the recruitment journey. So the potential for 3 at this stage getting added to Bonner. But certainly the 5 that we've got there now, keeping that, you know, the fact that we need a minimum of 4 to get the appliance out the door. You know, the 5 colleagues it's managing to get that at least a 5th availability. I thank them for what they're doing with the small numbers they've got. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much for the report and for everything the teams do. It's great to see the information about the fire training skills for the school pupils. Just wondering, is there a plan to roll that out to some of the other schools? For example, the ones that are really struggling with recruitment, those areas like Far and Fairley high schools and perhaps Allocation high school as well, to cover the adolescent areas.
For fire skills, and were you relating that back to recruitment as well, or just to really
It's just the fact
showcase
that these are the areas that are really struggling to recruit, although it's far more positive. That's great to see, but it'd be good to know if all the high schools will benefit from that training and the involvement of employability.
Yeah, no, I'll thank you for that question. Yeah, so the fire skills, it's a really positive project. We always get good feedback and good results from that. So yeah, we're actively looking to hold them in as many areas as we can. There's certainly been a couple in Thurso, which I appreciate out this committee area. There's been a couple there. Trying to remember the ones. Dingwall as well. Ultimately, the success of the event, we really need the facilities at the station. So it'll tend to always be at the larger stations, so we can do drills and we've got access to the, you know, an area for them to have food and you know, a canteen area and toilets that can cope with having 12 toilets and changing for up to 12 people. So we may be slightly limited on where we can hold it in station wise, but in terms of going round to other schools, it's just an engagement that we're doing. And we have that engagement with Highland Council Education to see where they are. Certainly, we're formulating a calendar with what fire skills are arranged, and I'd be happy to share that with members in due course, just so you're sighted on where they're going to be within 2026. They do. We're always really, it's a challenge to get the funding for them, because we need to get funding, and we've got a lot of sponsorship and goodwill, obviously, between ourselves and Highland Council. We cover some of the costs, but there's other matters that cost to be, and that's where a lot of the work goes, but we get the results there. So happy to share the calendar once we get it finalised for 2026.
Okay, thanks for that, Jamie. Just on that subject, would it be something that we could work with you together, so that we can maybe bus youngsters into Dornoch or Thurso, to allow them to attain that fire skills, and we look at some kind of accommodation for them for a short period of time? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something. What I'll do is I would pass it to David Bell. I'll just pass it back to David Bell. Do you? Yeah, it's absolutely the way going forward is working together to, you know, to solve what may be the small challenges that we have, getting things off the ground and getting them to happen. So who would David Bell be best to come back to? And would there be a specific person, or would he just email into the actual committee?
If you want to hear, we could possibly look at an invitation to attend one of our ward business meetings, so we can have an informal chat about how that could possibly work. So if you want to just sit beside me here, she would arrange that. Yep,
that's fine. If you invite David Bell, and just let me know as well, so that at least one of us can attend. We would welcome that. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Members, any other questions for Jamie? Got Jamie? Thank you very much. Members, we're going to ask to comment on and scrutinise the attached Southern report. Can we confident we've done that? Yeah. Thank you. Jamie, thank you very much for your time today. Much appreciated. And as I said, please pass on our thanks to all of your staff for the great work that they do.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members. Moving on, we're going to a slight change in the agenda. We're going to take the short-term lift control area, which is item 6, right now, because May was with us and she had to also attend another meeting as well. So to make sure that we can kind of discuss this, which is an important item, we're going to bring it on to the part of the agenda. So May, welcome and thank you very much for coming along today. I'll over to you.
Thank you very much, members, and thank you for accommodating that change in the agenda due to another area committee that's also on this morning. So I will share my screen if that's possible. Just let me know if this is visible.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So yes, the item recommendations before you in this report, I'll provide on the public record a presentation just so that it's clear what exactly a short-term let control area can and cannot do. So initially, it's important that this is sort of clear. So a short-term let control area would require that all changes of use from dwelling houses for short-term let purpose would be brought within the scope of the planning system, which would therefore require all conversions to require planning permission. But this should not be interpreted as a ban. Planning applications for these conversions to short-term let would be determined in accordance with the Council's planning policies and with National Planning Framework 4. So a short-term let control area does not affect existing properties where no material change of use had occurred at the time of establishment. It doesn't apply to second homes, which are not short-term lets under the definition. It doesn't apply to guest houses or B&Bs or annexes or pods or all forms of purpose-built tourism accommodation, because those would require planning permission anyway as newly built structures. So it is quite a specific type of short-term let that this actually applies to. So the policies that we already use within our existing short-term let control area in Ward 20, Dornoch and Strathspey, are shown on the screen. There are some provisions where the council therefore supports those conversions. One of those is where there is a previously long-term empty dwelling house, where this is evidenced to be a long-term empty dwelling house, which has been brought back into a positive use. Also where they're located above commercial units and other instances. So again, just as an example to illustrate how a short-term let control area is actually applied at the present time elsewhere within the council. So the process of designating any further short-term let control areas has to follow a statutory process within our regulations. The authority would have to notify and consult with the affected communities in the area that would be designated. We therefore have to submit our list of reasons for Scottish ministers to seek their approval, and then following their decision, if we were to receive that approval, we would have to undertake a final publication to notify the public that this would be coming into force within 28 days. And then the council's own process was agreed by councillors at the Highland Council Committee in September. So members agreed that the initial step would be for the area committees to decide on whether to progress with the introduction of a short-term let control area, and that all the subsequent steps to take that decision to formally commence the process, to undertake any consultation, to report back from the consultation and whether to submit to Scottish ministers, and then to finally whether to designate. All those subsequent steps would be taken by E&I committee. So this is the area committee obviously this morning, which is essentially that first point of the process where it's up for the area committees to decide on whether this is justified within Sutherland County. And then this is an overview of the process just in terms of where those stages fall within a proposed calendar timeline. So at the present time, we're at the very first row here, area committees deciding whether they want to establish a short-term let control area in their area. And if that were taken today by members, then the subsequent steps are outlined below. So I think then to move on quickly to what members have actually been presented in the report in front of them. The table here is an analysis of the Council's housing need and demand assessment containment analysis, which is where property sales transactions across all of Highland for the last 5 years have been assessed. So we have an indication of where property purchasers have originated from and where they have been purchasing property. We have the sales prices, and we also have a profile of the council's stock. So we can assess from this table, when you look at Sutherland particularly, that Sutherland is not a very well contained housing market area. So what I mean by containment is that instead of an area with high containment where most people purchasing properties are already from that area, Sutherland is characterised by an area with very low containment. So out of all the property transactions in the last 5 years, it's little under a third were actually undertaken by people already living in Sutherland, and we're seeing really high rates, over 50% of sales being completed to people out with the Highlands entirely within the Sutherland housing market area. We also then see that correspond with quite high rates of short-term lets and second homes relative to other housing market areas in Highland, and also relative to Highland as a whole. So in essence, even at the regional level for the whole of Sutherland, over 50% of property sales are purchased by buyers out with the Highland. Now, the purchased property prices are really determined by the median income of buyers. So if you do see instances where really high percentages are completed to those outside Highland, that means that essentially really high rates of external income in other areas is potentially playing a role in property prices within Sutherland County. When we see this in specific indicators for Sutherland, we do see that the median household income is lower in Sutherland than it is for Highland, and the average house prices within Sutherland and the market entry house prices, which are what properties are initially listed for, they are lower in Sutherland. So Sutherland should be, on paper, a more affordable place to purchase property relative to other areas of Highland. But due to really high proportions of sales to those out with the Highlands, that probably isn't the lived experience of people trying to find a property within Sutherland. So we're seeing as well that particularly the change in average house prices in Sutherland is one of the fastest, if not the fastest, I believe, in all the housing market areas in Highland. So the growth in prices that's occurred there over the last 5 years out paces other property price growth that we've seen in other housing market areas. And this is again then correlated to those rates of second homes and short-term lets that are also present within the council's stock in Sutherland. So at the profile of the short-term lets that we see specifically in Sutherland shows that in both wards, the majority of short-term lets are potential dwelling short-term lets. So they have been converted from previous dwellings, whereas there is also a significant proportion though of unconventional accommodation, so pods and chalets, and again, structures that would have required planning permission anyway. When we look at new build completions that have been completed over the last 5 years, it really varies by the year itself, but we are seeing higher percentages of new build housing completions transferred to short-term lets than the Highland average, particularly in Ward 1 in Northwest Sutherland. So in instances where there's really high rates of housing delivery, this is potentially less of an issue because there's enough homes being delivered to outpace those that are transferred to short-term let. But in an area that's really characterised by a lack of volume house builder activity, it's not entirely surprising that we're seeing some of the percentages that we are transferring to short-term let in the area. So then the figures that are shown within the report as well outline initially the profile type. So in the majority of areas within Sutherland, the short-term lets would usually be detached dwellings in rural settings. There are some instances where the majority are unconventional accommodation, but as you can see from the map, it's usually detached properties that we're seeing. When we look at the actual rates of potential dwellings that have been licensed as short-term lets, we're seeing that particularly in the Northwest, there are rates exceeding not just the Highland average, which is 6%, but actually, sorry, 5.5%, but we're also seeing those that are higher than what we would statistically expect to see within a normal range. So those are particularly concentrated in the Northwest. And then also when we move into checking which areas are continuing to grow and which areas are seeing those rates of short-term let conversion occur at a faster rate than the Highland average, we're noticing that it's not necessarily confined to the northwest, and that some of the strongest rates of growth are actually in the central areas and even on the east coast as well. So when we add these together and we look at the areas that are already high and the areas that are growing, there is an area that seems to have both characteristics. So we're seeing that it's already high and yet continuing to grow faster than the Highland average. But we're also then seeing other areas that are not high but are continuing to grow faster than the Highland average. So we have then also looked at the area placed plan and registered LPPs. So there is one registered local place plan in Sutherland in Golspie, which doesn't actually mention short-term lets. So we don't have any formal expression of a community concern on this issue from local place plans in Sutherland. We do have an area place plan for Sutherland though, which does mention housing pressures. Empty homes, second homes and homes used for short-term lets are all identified within the area place plan. And then we have also received instances of notified local place plans that have not been formally registered yet, but we can see from drafts that have been submitted, or in some instances we have not yet received the draft. We've only received a notification to prepare a local place plan. So this list is shown on the screen. So we can see that some make, again, no specific mention of short-term lets. However, the one that does particularly mention it is the Kyle of Sutherland local place plan, which goes into some detail about housing stock and economic mix within the area, and also then mentions that designated sites within the local place plan should be allocated with a requirement of no further short-term let applications being permitted, which is not explicitly saying that they want a short-term let control area. But again, I suppose it does signal that there could be a benefit in engaging formally with communities on this issue, because it's something that has been picked up in one local place plan and also in the area place plan. So the recommendations, therefore, that are in the report would suggest that on balance, there is a justification for a short-term let control area within Sutherland, and in particular in Northwest Sutherland. And I think that progressing with further consideration of this would enable communities within the affected area to be participating in that consultation at that stage. And it would enable us to define the exact boundaries of any proposed short-term let control area. There's obviously a strong tourist demand within the area, and further purpose-built tourism accommodation could be provided to provide for this following the usual planning process. So on that basis, I'm happy to close and allow members to ask questions if they have any, if they'd like to raise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Maeve. That was really interesting. Thank you for the report in general. Members, hold the floor open to any questions for Maeve. Councillor McGilvray.
Just to confirm, please, we have to decide this as an area rather than as individual wards.
I think we can decide it as Ward 1 or Ward 4 or all of Sutherland. We have that all.
Okay, thanks.
Don't really have any questions. I'd just like to see us support the recommendations completely, particularly from Ward 1. Everything that's been said is what I experience as I go around these communities and containing the figures reflect what we see in Sutherland and hear from the communities. Affordable housing is not the lived experience of people in these areas looking to find somewhere to live. I think, you know, it's a really positive move if we can give people a chance to get involved in this consultation and to gather the evidence for the right decision for it. So I support this.
Thank you for that. Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to maybe echo what Councillor Hutcherson has said there. I think it's vitally important that we take it to the communities and let them have a say as well. Going forward, it's something that's probably going to raise its head over the next number of years. So I think it's time that we had a look at it and take it to the communities to see what they want as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Morrison. Councillor Beard.
Yes, I would just echo my other two Ward 1 councillors, and I would agree with everything that's been said. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think it's fairly clear that Ward 1 is in favour of progressing this, and personally, I would be in favour of it going for the whole of the county, because I think there's evidence there to suggest, and on the east coast as well, that it's starting to impact in the area as well. And at the end of the day, this is going to be a consultation process, and the communities will all have a chance to have their input. So that's my thoughts on it. Councillor McGilvery, you got your hand up. You're on mute, Jim.
Sorry, double clicked. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. It's adding a layer of planning is not an insurmountable obstacle to any applicant. And I feel that there's also evidence in the Dornoch area of short-term lets starting to appear. So I'm quite happy with our whole county progression on this matter.
Thanks for that. Anybody have different thoughts on it? No? Okay. Right, I think members, I think we're agreed. There's a number of recommendations there, mostly for noting, but the last two is to agree that the Southern Area Committee therefore seeks to progress with the process of considering the introduction of a short-term let control area, covering all or part of the Southern area, and in so doing, we agree that progressing with consideration of a short-term let control area enables communities within the area to participate in that consultation at that appropriate stage. And we would say that we would like to progress this as for the whole county of Sutherland. Agreed on that? Agreed. Right. Thank you, members.
Thank you, members.
And thank you, Maeve.
Thank you.
Members, moving on, we're now back on to invitation B and item 4 on the agenda.
Thank you. Good morning, members. The report in front of you provides an update on the Sutherland invitation to pay income, which has been generated from the following Sutherland car parks. So in Ward 1, it's at Melvick Beach, Clackaw Beach and Dornoch Village. And in Ward 4, it's Golspie Fountain Road and the Golspie Shore car park. The members, as per council policy, 50% of the net income after costs are passed to Sutherland County Committee as earmarked funds from the previous year. So the income from 24-25 means that there's now £10,453 now available, which means to date a total of 28,900 has been allocated to the area budget. Section 6 of the report provides a year-on-year breakdown of the income in detail, and Section 7 of the report shows expenditure to date, which shows that 10 community organisations across Sutherland have been awarded funding totalling £10,883.84. So the remaining funds available are therefore in Ward 1, £12,469.14 and £5,547.02 in Ward 4. Members, finally, Section 9 sets out the approval process, which at Area Committee in November of last year, members agreed to allocate the funding as per the process for the ward discretionary budget, which ensures support for community-led activity across both wards. So the recommendation is this process continues and it will be reviewed annually. Myself and my colleague Ross Bartlett are available for any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Remember any questions? No, I'm Councillor Morgan.
Sure, yeah, thank you. The only issue I have, and it's maybe I can take this offline, is that we seem to be putting regulations in place for non-council car parks regarding fire standards of camper vans that are legally meant to be X amount of meters apart, and we don't seem to bring this to our own car parks. So that's something we maybe have a look at going forward, because with all the legalities and things nowadays, we don't want to be caught out by having a car park that's not actually a legal one. So just to be mindful of that going forward. Thank you.
That's a very good point, Councillor Morrison. I think I would agree with you. It's an issue that has been raised in full council on a number of occasions, and it still hasn't been resolved. So I'm happy to support you with that. But that's not part of this particular report. Well, I have a question regarding the Melvick Beach on Ward 1, where the income was down £47 for the last year. So is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I can answer that for you. The car park was closed for the refurbishments in 24-25, which is why the income was so low. It only became mandatory charging in March this year. So that's why there's a big drop in income on that car park. I can send the full breakdown for members if you would like, separately. So that you can see the exact income. Because it was shut, effectively.
Okay, thanks. That certainly explains it. Thank you. Any other questions for Rob, for Ross or Fiona? Seeing any hands? Members, we are asked to a number of recommendations, mostly for noting, but to approve the process for the distribution of invitation to pay income in Sutherland, and to approve delegated power for the authorisation of spend up to £10,000 to the Community Development Manager in consultation with local members. Are we happy to agree these recommendations? Okay, thank you.
Great.
Okay, moving on. Thanks, Ross. Moving on to item 5. Now, just for clarification, this item says Sutherland Common Good Fund. Sorry to say to other parts of the county, it's not the Sutherland Common Good Fund, it's actually Dornoch Common Good Fund, and it's just a way back of a typo there, so apologies for that. This is the invitation to pay parking scheme for the Dornoch Common Good Fund. Ross, I believe you're going to take this one.
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, apologies about getting the name wrong. That's my fault. I should have picked that up. So this is just a report. So the common good income for the car parks is allocated at source directly to the common good fund. So the purpose of this paper is to recover the cost of parking services for running the invitation to pay in the car park. So the car park took in 24-25 3,326, as you can see in item 5.1, and 6.1 itemizes the costs to the service. So we've got card transaction fees, the maintenance for the ticket machine, and then the staff cost to retrieve cash and monitor the site at 1.5 hours a week for 6 months. We kind of cut this car park down because it's not so busy through the winter months. So normally it's a 12-month kind of recovery on staff time. So the costs we would be looking to recover are £1,124.80.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions for that? No. We're happy to agree with the recommendation.
Great.
That's great, Ross. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair.
Members, moving on to item 7 of the agenda, Edderton Hill, Recreation access, and we've got Matt Taylor.
Item 6. So I've just provided a report regarding the recreational access on the Hill of Edderton. Just by way of background, in section 5, access rights are applicable to most land in Scotland through the 2003 Land Reform Act, and the council has a statutory duty under section 13 to protect and keep open and access rights. Hill of Edderton is the woodland in Edderton. It's on the north side of Moranty Forest, and it's being used for recreational access.
Trouble hearing you, sorry.
Sorry.
Speak up the word. It's used for recreational access for many decades, and the Hill of Edderton contains an extensive network of routes suitable for recreation. It's a selection of mixed built tracks, grassed over tracks, and other informal access through way leaves and fire breaks. And it's mainly access from the public road at Bog Row, but there's also access from Tarlogie and also from Moranty Forest as well. It's privately owned in 3 separate titles by 5 individuals. However, since 2023, I put May here, but it was probably a little bit earlier. We've had a number of enquiries regarding conflict between landowners and mainly equestrian users regarding the tracks on the Edderton. The primary source of these conflict is damage to the routes caused through equestrian use. I briefly mentioned here, there is an understanding established through case law that a landowner may reasonably restrict access rights where the exercise of those rights has damaged or may damage the tracks. And from that also, there's also the Scottish Outdoor Access Code, which I've detailed in Appendix 2 about how people should access rights on their equestrian use. And there's also other guidance from Nature Scott and British Horse Society Scotland as well. On a number of visits, the Highland Council officers, myself included, have seen evidence of equestrian use through deep hoof prints, churned up surfaces and sealing on steeper slopes. So it's clear to me that some of the tracks aren't suitable for equestrian use. But then I'll also go into paragraph 5.7.6, where clearly some of the tracks are suitable for use because they're well surfaced and they're high. And I think it's the conflict between the level of the types of use that are possible in the woodland. So it's the conflict between the two paragraphs really that's really hard to deal with. There has been some lock gates, but currently there's no lock gates, and there is some signage up that is potentially not in keeping with the Scottish Outdoor Access Code. We have tried on a number of occasions to resolve this issue with both the landowner and representatives of horse riders. Unfortunately, no real mutually acceptable solution has been reached regarding how the land is managed or how the public can reasonably access the Hill of Edderton. It is noted, and in section 7.9, paragraph 7.9, the council's duty to assert the rights, and we are for the benefit of the public. We have no strict duty to assist the landowners, and so we don't sit on the fence completely. We do have a side in terms of the recreational access users. Way forward, as the situation remains unresolved, with neither party really accepting the council's position actions, I this report hopes to go forward with some kind of mediation process at a cost to the council, and we would invite members of the public who want to exert access rights, the landowners, to try and do that. And this is maybe to try and do a reset and start again and see if we can find a way forward. There is an understanding as well that the public will be able to exercise their access rights on the core paths, which are only a small part of the woods. So while the issues cover the whole area, we are quite interested in the core paths, and that's a link through to Tarlogie and link through to the viewpoint. So we're also going to try and speak to all landowners, seek the removal of any restrictive signs and unlocking of pedestrian gates if there were there.
I just stop you being told because I'm definitely hear you, so you can speak up.
Yes. Mediation has been suggested several times, but parties have been unable to agree this independently. So we've tried to get members of Parliament and MSPs involved, but so far it's not been possible. So that's the recommendation for the council to do that. And we would report back to the committee with any progress or processes that would be needed to take that forward.
Okay, thanks for that, Matt. Members, do you have any questions about this? Chairman, Councillor McGilvery.
Thank you, Chair. I've been involved in this issue for 6 months or so. I've been invited to speak to both parties separately and individually, which I've done so. And I've come away just seeing both points of view, quite honestly, and with no clear idea as to how to proceed. And I very much welcome the support coming forward, which establishes a formal council position on things, subject to the agreement of this committee. And I welcome the participation of having the expertise, professional expertise of both access officers and the council legal team to back up the recommendations of this report. So I just hope, as I said, I can see both points of view very, very clearly. I have sympathy for both sides. But I think I just hope that this report actually tries to provide a way forward for resolution.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, members, or statements? Okay, well, from my point of view, I think that there is no onus on both parties to actually preserve the ground and have a regular access available to everybody. But we have to look after the ground that we're talking about with minimum damage. And there's a way around that, and I think if we can get the mediation process is put in place, I think, and we have both participants willing to participate in that, then we have a way forward. But and I certainly hope that that's the case, and I will definitely do with the recommendations which suggest that we should follow that particular route. Are we happy to do that, members? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on. We are now on to the Community Regeneration Fund, item 8 on the agenda. We have Chloe Murray with us. Morning, Chloe.
Hi, good morning, members. I'll just run through this. So, members, I'm sure you're aware of what the CRF team do. So this morning I'm here to discuss a Community Regeneration Fund application that's come in from Skerry Village Hall. So at the head of the meeting today, you will receive the application form and RAG summary spreadsheet highlighting the outcomes and the assessment that's been undertaken. So Skerry Village Hall are seeking £104,718, which is 68% of their project costs, to remove the current timber and asbestos cladding, add insulation and new cladding, and improve the accessibility at the front and the rear of the hall. The project has assessed well and is eligible for CRF, and I have no concerns that it won't be delivered in the timescales. At present, there is £324,978 and 35 pence remaining in the Sutherland pot, which means the fund is currently undersubscribed. So I'm happy to answer any questions or queries, but I'm asking if you are able to decide whether to approve, defer or reject the application under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Members, do you have any questions for Chloe? No questions. Well, I have a question. I'm curious, this is an area that has access to considerable wind farm funds, and yet the contribution for the application from wind farms is considerably lower than has been requested from the council. Has there been any discussion about that, Chloe?
Sorry, I missed the last part of your question there, Councillor Gill. Could you repeat the question?
Or might have a bit difficult to read. We're looking at, I'm asking about the contribution from the wind farm, and it seems to be considerably lower than we've been requested from the council. Has there been discussion with the applicant regarding the contribution from the wind farms?
So for this project in particular, their match funding has come in from Caithness and North Sutherland Fund, awards for all, and the Hugh Fraser Foundation. So this project does not have match funding from the wind farms. However, I'm aware that the applicant's also working on other projects for the hall, so running separately at the same time, and I'm sure that they might have been using the wind farm money for that. It is something that I've raised with them, but it's not something that they've got back to me straight away, but it's something I can raise again, just to sort of let them know that this is available and that they can tap into that too.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, members, we have a recommendation here. Are we happy to agree this request?
Yeah.
Okay, that's I'll agree. Chloe, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for your time. Bye, bye.
Okay, members, moving on to item 9, which is housing performance, and we've got Emma Taggart with us. Emma, over to you. Is she there?
Apologies. A problem with the clicking of the button there. So I'm here to present the housing performance report for the period 1st of April 2025 to the 30th of September 2025 for the Housing Management Service in Sutherland. The key performance information is based on the recommendations from the Scottish Housing Regulator. Figures for rent arrears, ASB and allocations are cumulative in accordance with the Scottish Housing Charter, Social Housing Charter, and I'd like to draw your attention to the information contained in the report and the summary tables. First summary table, which is current rent arrears. As the narrative states, arrears levels have increased from Q1 but are around the same level as Q2 in the previous year, and we continue to feel the impact of the migration from legacy benefits to universal credit, which takes people into a different cycle of payments and puts their accounts into arrears. The team are working hard to help people during this migration period and to get accounts back into up to date. Number 2, gross rent arrears as a percentage of the annual rent due. Sutherland are performing well against the Highland wide target. Table 3, value of current arrears in bands. That shows that we've got quite low numbers of cases at higher amounts, reflecting the early intervention work being done and to prevent higher level arrears. Table 4, rent actions, that's not cumulative, showing that we have a low number of court actions in general and no evictions completed in recent times, reflecting the commitment to try and avoid this step and help people. Table number 5, antisocial behaviour cases reported and resolved, none in quarter 2. The team work hard to try and address this problem, but cases can be difficult to resolve. Table number 6, homeless presentations. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. The table 7, time spent in temporary accommodation, is a Highland-wide figure rather than a Sutherland figure. And table 8, showing the homeless household property types, sort of indicate that there's a highest need for 1-bedroom properties. Nothing to add in terms of the allocations, except that quarter 2 and quarter 3 of 24-25 reflect new build schemes that were allocated during those periods. And happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Emma. It's good to see that Sutherland generally is kind of leading the way in terms of managing the current rent arrears, as that we seem to do that consistently year on year, which is good to see. Just one question about the Q2 increase from Q2 last year for East Sutherland and Edderton, going up by 3,000. Is there any reason for that, or is it just down to the universal credit issue that you discussed there?
It will be down to the universal credit issue, because as soon as somebody changes over, their account goes into about 4 weeks of arrears, and the DWP are migrating all cases now from legacy benefits. So initially it started as a trickle, but now we're getting to the end of cases. Eventually that will stop, because all the cases will be migrated across, and we'll, but yes, it will be to do with that.
That's great, thank you. And then just out of interest, what sort of support do you give the tenants who find themselves in that situation?
Well, obviously the first step is to talk to them. So we're getting in contact with people as soon as we become aware that they're being migrated across. We help people sort of with referrals to support their, if they're having any difficulties with their universal credit claims, where we can apply for any sort of additional funding. We are utilising that, be it from organisations that offer aid, for instance, to people in the armed forces or to people in certain professions. Just generally talking to people and, helping them in that respect.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emma, and welcome to, I think, probably is your first county committee meeting. It's just to do with allocating the houses, and it's maybe more a comment than a question, but can we please make sure the houses are fit for tenants before we let them have their first viewing? Because first impressions are the one that sticks in their heads, and we have issues quite a lot of the times when people are seeing a house in a bad state, and then they don't want it and they can't get it up to the required sort of needs that they need. So it's really just a comment that rather than just ticking the box and getting it off the void list, can we make sure it's suitable for let first? Thank you for the work you do.
Thank you. Emma, I know it's not really your area of responsibility, but do you have any comments on that?
The only thing I would say is that the properties that come to us to be relet should be meeting the void standard, and that's the building maintenance. That's more the building maintenance side, but obviously we'll bear in mind the feedback going forward.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, on table 9, sorry, on table 9 we've got the figures for transfers into Sutherland. I'm just wondering if we have figures for transfers out of Sutherland into other parts of Highland.
I don't have that information to hand, but I can get that information for you.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Emma? No? Okay, recommendations are asked to note information provided on housing performance in the period 1st of April to the 3rd of September 2025. We haven't done that?
Yeah.
Thank you. And as just like to echo Councillor Morrison's welcome to your new position, and look forward to working with you going forward.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Members, moving forward on to item 10, the Dornoch Common Good, this is the DADCA application. Councillor McGilvery.
Chair, I'm now stepping outside the meeting. If somebody can give me a wave when I can come back in, I'd be very grateful. Thanks.
Yeah, Jim, just turn your camera off and we'll give a shout back in.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, members, Dornoch Common Good, Dornoch District Community Association application requiring Sutherland County Committee approval and Fiona Spinner.
Thank you, members. So the report in front of you invites committee to consider an application from Dornoch and District Community Association, known as DADCA, for 280,000 from the Dornoch Common Good towards the development of a new community centre. The DADCA, a charitable organisation set up in 2010, serves the local community by supporting social, cultural and recreational activities. And DADCA over many years has explored plans for a new community centre to replace the existing 180-year-old social club. And earlier this year, DADCA commissioned a feasibility study, which you can see in Appendix 2. The Section 6 sets out the full proposal, and DADCA are in a strong position, having secured assets of 720,000. And these, which includes funds raised from the sale of plots. There's been 4 plots sold so far, which has raised a total of 330,000. There's 2 plots remaining, which if sold will raise 160,000. And the sale of the social club will raise a further 250. So the build costs are for the new community centre are estimated at 1.7 million. And which includes a 1.54 build cost, £100,000 equipment, and the running cost for the first year of 60,000. So how will it be funded? So if approved, this application will be funded from the Dornoch Common Good reserves. And the reserves, it should be noted that it's been built up over the past few years in anticipation of a large community-led infrastructure application like this. So currently the reserves are sitting at 318,520. If this application is approved, the reserves will reduce to 38,520. But further mitigation of this risk could be managed through a reduced grants and contribution fund to re-establish the reserves to cover liabilities and enable support for future significant projects like this. If approved, the money would only be issued once all other match funding is secured and in place, as well as any required planning permissions. So Section 8 of the report sets out the community support, and the feasibility study evidences strong community support for this project. And at the time of writing the report, the Community Council hadn't met, but I attended their meeting last week and can confirm that they are in full support of a new community centre. Section 6 of the report summarises the community benefits that this centre will bring, including offering a more flexible space to provide a broader range of cultural, social and economic activities. Finally, members, just to note, this project does align with several strategic themes within the Sutherland area place plan, including support for health and wellbeing outcomes and building community capacity, and providing access to inclusive access to services. So I'm happy to take any further questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fiona. Just for clarification as well, I'd just like to point out that Councillor McGilvray has actually left the meeting for this application. It didn't just turn his camera off, he's actually left the meeting, so we will contact him and bring him back in when we're discussing this. Okay, members, do you have any questions or any comments? No? Okay. Well, from my point of view, I think we recognise that the Dornoch Common Good Fund is in a strong position at the moment, although this is a significant application and will have a significant impact on the reserves. However, I think that this is really beneficial for the community, and I would fully support the application, but we need to be very careful and monitor the reserves going forward, although we do have certain good income streams for the common good. So are we happy to accept the recommendation to approve the £280,000 application from Dornoch and District Community Association? Okay, thank you, members.
Yep. Good.
Thank you. Okay, members, moving on. We'll wait a few minutes and get Jim back in.
Yes, Chair, I've messaged him to come back in again, but I'm sure he'll be there soon.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And thank you, Fiona, for monitoring that. Appreciate it. Members, we're moving on to item number 11, Dornoch Common Good Monitoring Report. If you want to give that to us now.
Members, this report presents the Q2 25-26 monitoring statement for the Dornoch Common Good Fund. Income and expenditure are agreed as part of the budget setting process. The section 6 of the report sets out the income and expenditure, and the income to note in this quarter includes the invitation to pay income from the Dornoch Beach Car Park, and other incomes will be generated in the next quarter. In terms of the expenditure in this quarter, the grants and contributions is now totaling 21,335, and that's been paid by up to the end of Q2. Appendix 2 provides a table setting out the detail of that, and a further 38,651 grants have been approved with payment pending, so that will be updated in the next report. Section 7, the current budget for grants and contributions is currently at £60,000. Due to increasing demand and pressure on available resources, including 2 outstanding applications from Dornoch Area Community Interest Company for a transport project and a sports centre feasibility study totaling 10,892, a revision to the budget is proposed to ensure continued support for priority community-led projects. The total budget currently includes £25,000, which is currently set aside for repairs to Dornoch Beach Car Park, which, given the time of year, is unlikely to take place in the current financial year. So it's proposed to defer these works until 26-27 financial year, and that £15,000 of the £25,000 is reallocated to the grants and contribution budget, increasing it to £75,000. This will enable the Common Good to support the 2 projects that I've just mentioned, and will leave a further 4,121.25 for any further applications from community groups that come in the remainder of this financial year. If the variation is approved, Dornoch Car Park budget would therefore become nil in this financial year, and the grants and contribution budget would increase to £75,000, and the estimated usable reserves would increase by £10,000. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Fiona. Any questions, members? Councillor McGilvray.
Just to welcome the report, Chair. I think there's a bit of juggling going on just now in view of the commitments required of the common good, and we'll just have to make the best of it. I'm quite content with the way things are being handled by officers. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, members? No? Okay, I'll be happy to accept recommendations to scrutinise and note to monitoring statement and note the proposal to vary expenditure. Okay, thank you very much.
Agreed.
Okay, moving on. Item 12 is the Ward 1 and 4 discretionary payments. That's all laid out in the paper. I don't intend, don't need to report that. We don't need that being reduced. It's quite self-explanatory. Any questions or any comments or any thoughts on that? No? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. I'll skip the recommendations, right? 2 seconds.
To note the awards.
It's just that we are just invited to note the awards, and I think we're well aware of that. Are we happy to agree? Thank you very much. Okay, members, we're down on to item 13, which is the last item on the agenda, and that is the minutes of the last meeting. Are we happy to have any questions or any concerns with that? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the meeting, members. Thank you very much for attendance today. Greatly appreciated, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.